Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Well, they have got him finally, trapped like John Dillinger outside the Biograph Theater by the G-Men. Democrats announced today that they have finally obtained proof, concrete and irrefutable proof, that the president is in fact a secret Russian agent.
This president seems to be putting Russia's interests ahead of our own.
The evidence suggests, indeed, Trump has been a pawn of the Russians.
Don Lemon has it nailed. As we told you last night, you could have seen this coming. The FBI suspected it for some time. The Bureau opened a criminal investigation into the president more than a year ago on the grounds that no loyal American would fire a leader as impressive as FBI Director Jim Comey. Putin must have ordered it. The Washington Post concurred with this. As one of that paper's columnists noted, Trump has also, quote, endorsed populism. That's right. Populism. That is the stink of Russia all over it. It smells like vodka and day-old herring. So people in Washington have had their suspicions for years now, but now we know for certain, and we know because of a stunning New York Times piece today. In it, current and former administration officials, speaking, of course, from behind the protective veil of anonymity, because honestly, you don't know what the KGB or whatever it's called these days is capable of doing to people who tell the truth. But they nevertheless divulged that on multiple occasions over the last year, the president has privately floated the idea of pulling the United States out of NATO. Let that sink in. Leaving NATO. This is a huge story. Or it would have been a huge story in 1983 when the Soviet Union still existed and it was still clear what the point of NATO was. NATO, you remember, was created to keep the Soviets from invading Western Europe, and NATO did a very good job of that, all the way until the very day the Soviet Union collapsed. That was the summer of 1991. It was almost 28 years ago. Vladimir Putin runs Russia now. He does not plan to invade Western Europe. He can't. So why do we still have NATO? Well, nobody really knows. In Washington, you're definitely not allowed to ask. And that's a shame because it would be an interesting conversation. Remaining in NATO comes with significant obligations. In the 1990s, our leaders decided it would be a wise idea to promise countries like Latvia and Estonia that we would use nuclear weapons to protect them if they ever had a problem with Russia. Why did we do that? Well, who knows? The details are lost to history. But the point is, we did that. Article 5 obligates the United States to protect any NATO ally that is threatened. So how do we feel about that now? Are you ready to launch a nuclear war over Latvia? What do you think of sending your kids to defend the territorial integrity of Estonia? Our foreign policy establishment thinks it's well worth it. In fact, under our current rules of membership in NATO, we would have no choice. You might not have known that. All of this might merit a national debate of some sort at some point when we're ready 28 years in. But no, the left isn't into national debates anymore. They're into screaming and threats and criminal investigation and other forms of coercion. They like things the way they are in this country. They're benefiting hugely from the status quo, and they don't like being challenged. They consider asking difficult questions a criminal act. Just this morning, in fact, Preet Bharara, he's the most famous former federal prosecutor in the country, explained this view on Twitter. He said this, quote, "If true, Trump should immediately and publicly state his apparent wish to withdraw from NATO so he can be promptly impeached, convicted, and removed from office," unquote. In other words, talking about leaving NATO isn't simply unwise, according to our leaders. It's an impeachable offense. Lots of famous and powerful people in Washington think this. Watch.
Withdrawing from NATO, even discussion about the withdrawing from NATO, I think would be disastrous for the security.
I think that act would be so destructive to our country. It would be a ground for some profound effort by our part, whether it's impeachment or the 25th Amendment. He can't do that to this country. And I don't believe that he can do it without Senate ratification.
Did you catch that? The 25th Amendment. In other words, according to a sitting member of Congress, someone who's there right now, rethinking membership in NATO isn't just treasonous and criminal, though obviously it is. It's also prima facie evidence of insanity. You're not fit to govern if you say that. You probably shouldn't drive a car, just in the interest of public safety. So whatever happened to the old Democratic Party? When did the anti-war people become florid neocons? When did it become the party of Bill Kristol and Max Boot and every other discredited hack still trying to replicate the Iraq disaster in nations around the world? Who knows when that happened, but that's exactly what the Democratic Party is today. Just ask Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard is a Democratic member of Congress. She's now running for president. On most questions, she's a conventional liberal. She represents Hawaii, after all. Of course she is. But on the question of Syria, she's skeptical. Gabbard isn't eager to overthrow the Assad government. Why? Well, because she worries about what might come next, what might happen to the Christians, the many other religious minorities who live there. For saying that, for holding that position, she is being denounced today by the left as a monster. Just this morning, the Daily Beast tried to link her to David Duke, literally. The dumb people on TV are mad, too. Watch them.
She went in 2017, Gloria, this is going to be another issue, to visit with Bashar al-Assad in Syria. And this trip has already come back to bite her. She did apologize for this.
She did, but, you know, how many apologies can you make for bad judgment? Not only will she be criticized inside the Democratic Party, but I think it makes her a less effective candidate. I mean, you know, she can't position herself against Trump about meeting with dictators when, in fact, she's done it herself. So, you know, I think she has some, I think she's going to have some problems.
That's the new standard in Washington, just so you know. Let's be crystal clear about this. You were not allowed to meet with foreign dictators. It's immoral. In fact, it might be treason. It could trigger the 25th Amendment, unless it's, I don't know, Xi Jinping of China. Yes, the Chinese government murders its political opponents. Yes, it has put Muslims in concentration camps. Yes, they're languishing in those camps right now. But it's not a huge deal to meet with the Chinese. The former governor of California, Jerry Brown, met with Xi just 2 years ago. He praised him as a leader in the fight against global climate change, even though China is, of course, by far the world's biggest polluter. But whatever. He may be a dictator, but he's a progressive dictator. And the left is not against those. It's definitely for those. In fact, they're role models, in case you haven't figured it out.